The 2020s, I would say, have not been the best of years for the majority of people, me included. And I think the reason I want to make this video is to kind of focus on something positive that's happened throughout these years for me, and it's a big one for me that I think I need to give myself some props for. The other reason I'm making a video on it is because I used to do these style of videos back in the day, and I kind of wanted to see, is there still a place for them? Because a lot of the videos I've noticed with my channel lately are basically, I brought this, here it is. So I'm gonna kind of try and play around with the channel a bit, see if I can throw out more of this sort of content, and hey, maybe it might be a little bit of inspiration or motivation to help you if you haven't learned to drive yourself to go out and do it. So basically, last month in February, I can't remember the exact date, but I basically passed my driving test at the age of 22. Now here in the UK, the legal age to actually begin learning to drive is 17. I did actually start learning after my 17th birthday, however, unfortunately, due to a multitude of things in my life, I basically had a mental breakdown. The two sides of it was basically my college course I was doing just wasn't right for me, and then secondly was driving itself. I felt a huge surge of anxiety going on around it that just like had a couple of incidents in the first driving, nothing major, not like a major crash or anything, it was just sort of like stupid stuff that I just felt like I shouldn't be doing. And what didn't really help is that not being able to learn outside of lessons, on top of not having my instructor be as consistent as I think he should be. Sure, stuff happens, they've got to rearrange their schedules, but like my instructor would do like 1 week we were able to do the 2-hour session, and then the next week when I thought it was going to happen, he wouldn't turn up, or just like would say that he's not available that week, which meant I had a 2-week gap of not being able to drive, which meant that I kind of felt like when it came to the next lesson I was relearning everything all over again, and nothing ever clicked those first few times where I was learning. And in the end, the mental breakdown I had that made me realize a lot about my anxiety condition that I have, just like it meant that I kind of left driving for a little bit of time. And that was about 2018 that all happened. And now we're in 2023, which I'll say is about between 4 and 5 years where I am now actually able to legally drive. And this process basically began with me being made redundant, essentially. I had been working to save up some money to begin doing driving lessons. I went in with the idea of, you know what, I'm gonna do an intensive course because that will just be a good way of me to get as many hours as I need in a day to just learn and be able to pick everything up, and hopefully I can just get driving done quicker that way. But the first thing you have to do before you're even allowed to get to the kind of actual driving stage is getting your theory done. And being made redundant in August of last year basically made me go, you know what, I don't have a job now, I may as well use some of this time to be a bit productive and put it towards learning how to drive. On top of that, I was still doing my apprenticeship without an employer for about 2 months, but still I was able to fit it in around that. Now theory is quite a difficult thing to pick up, I think, for people, and especially like me, I felt like I just sort of lucked out with my theory test, because the way I decided to learn was I didn't really look up the highway code, which is probably a bad thing to admit, but the way I sort of learned was I basically found an app, and it's actually the James May app, and I really do recommend using, like, if not that app, like use any sort of like app on your phone and just go through all the tests or like the mock exams they do on there, because that was super helpful and was really what got me through my driving theory test. So I took the time to do that, passed it. I was basically, if I got one more mark wrong, then I was basically gonna have to redo my test, so I kind of lucked out. I think I even did a thing where I either went back and answered something that I had gotten wrong right, or I had gone back and I had answered something that I'd got right wrong, because I definitely changed some answer there that either made or break the tests I had done. But then after that, I found a company that would be able to do an intensive course, and this was about November now, and I wouldn't be able to begin it until January, February time. And with a lot of these companies, it's super hard to really know what you're gonna get. So it's kind of a case of just biting the bullet and doing it, and obviously there's a bit of a backlog because of everything that happened in 2020. But through this company, I was able to find an amazing instructor, a guy called Mark. Now, it was supposed to be 36 hours. Didn't quite work out that way for me. So essentially what happened is the company that I booked through kind of bollocked up the whole actually booking my driving test. So with my instructor, it was supposed to be that it booked for the next Monday from the Monday I began. So I was going to do Monday through Friday, have Saturday as break, do Sunday as another intensive day, and then Monday would be my test. And they hadn't actually properly booked in my lesson despite confirming it with my instructor, and had actually brought it forward to the Friday, giving me actually 4 days to actually prepare for doing my driving test. However, me and my instructor Mark didn't actually find anything out about this until the day after my first day of the intensive course. Now, my first day of the intensive course luckily had gone really well. I felt like I was able to sort of pick everything up quite easily, not easily, but I was able to have the time to be able to put towards understanding how to drive and being able to do it. And personally, I would say that I learned more in those first, like, I think 5 hours or so than I ever did in my previous lessons with my previous instructor. That was due to me having the time to be able to learn about it, my new instructor Mark being able to actually explain things a lot better, and also like he's very good at like working around his students and being able to adjust his teaching to each person, I would say. And he did give me the option on the beginning of that Tuesday, when we had realized what had happened, to postpone and rebook at a different time, get a different test and whatnot, and just go through him. But he did also say that if I wanted to just push through it and add a couple extra hours onto my days and then do the test for when it had been newly booked in for, that I could do that. And I said, you know what, screw it, we made good progress yesterday, let's just do it and get it done. So the time where I was learning, it was actually going really well. And it's just like, I feel like for me personally, is who I am as a person, I just needed that extra time to just really be able to click in a car and just understand how to use it, and I just felt like things were coming a lot more faster to me. Another thing to kind of mention on top of everything is like me being a bit older, and also it's my money that I'm putting towards it. I felt like I had a real need and want to do it that probably helped push me into the right mindset to be able to go through those lessons at a pace that maybe I wouldn't have been comfortable with when I was 17, but because of where I had pushed myself to be at this point in time, like I just knew I had to do it and just felt more determined to get it done. So now we get to the day of the driving test, and my instructor has all the confidence in the world that I'm going to pass my test, and really believes I've done well enough like in my progress. And like learning how to drive in 4 days isn't easy. Granted, I did have extra time to do it, but to do it in 4 days and then have your test, that's not really an easy feat. So then my instructor just walks me through everything and how it will work in the driving test and whatnot. So then he takes me to the place to do it, and on my own at that point. I meet my examiner, and at first he seems like he's going to be alright. And the thing about examiners is I know they get a lot of shit sometimes, and they have to have a bit of like separation from the person trying to do their test so they're not being biased and whatnot. And obviously there's a lot of stuff they got to look out for in case something goes wrong or the person just shouldn't be allowed to drive in the first place. But I did my whole test, and I'd driven on a route that we hadn't actually previously done before, so that was like a whole new thing to me. And luckily, because where I live, I've lived here all my life, I know the area pretty well anyway. The first part of the test was this roundabout, and it's one of the most annoying roundabouts in this town, I would say, because you've literally like where the exam comes out of, it's like the hardest like bit to get out of. There are 2 lanes. I got into the left lane that I'd always been taught to go in and to go straight ahead because it was basically where 12 o'clock is. And after waiting a couple of minutes to make sure that there was no cars actually coming, which is very rare for that roundabout, we went for it and it was fine. I got going, I got a good pace going, and I kind of felt very comfortable with how I was driving, even having an examiner next to me. And then we went onto a dual carriageway, which was fine for a bit, and then basically I was driving, and it was quite a sunny day. The sun was quite glaring on the mirrors and whatnot, so I was basically looking, making sure that I was getting into the right lane, because I needed to, being in the left, and I had checked several times. And as I was pulling out, a Porsche basically decided out of nowhere, going super fast, to basically come up on my backside, so then I had to kind of go back in. And I was even kind of saying to myself, or under my breath, or just in my head, essentially something on the lines of, fuck's sake, I hope I haven't failed my test. The rest of it goes fine. I think it was a parallel park on that one that I needed to do as my maneuver, and everything seemed to go alright. And then we got to the end of it, and my examiner basically asked me how do I think I did, and I was just a bit honest, said I think I have passed, but I am a bit concerned that there may have been 2 places that I might have slipped up and might have cost me. And then he was like, well, this is just where the examiner just changed and kind of became a bit of a prick. Essentially he told me he failed, and that's fine. If I had failed, fine. And I really thought it was due to this Porsche, and I sort of was like, was it that bit? He basically went, no, that was fine. He said I checked everything fine there, so I was like, well, what the fuck was it? Turns out, on that first roundabout, I had used the wrong lane, and that's apparently a no-no, which I can understand. And he was about to go in on me about, like, he basically started by saying, well, why did you do that? And I was kind of just in shock at that point, because my instructor had taught me that that was the right lane to use. And upon him asking me, why did I do it, I told him that's what I was taught. Now, I'm not like saying anything bad about my instructor, because he was great in terms of everything he had taught me to do to learn how to drive. It simply felt Like, it was whoever was going to be in the car with me, it was kind of a however they're feeling on the day is what they're going to choose sort of thing. Because with this roundabout, it's essentially you have 2 lanes where you're coming out of, and then where you're trying to go, which feels like it's straight ahead, meaning if you were in a car, you would go straight ahead in the left lane, and then it would go on to another 2 lanes where the exit you're trying to go off. So I would kind of go swoop round and then boom into it, but it's very awkwardly placed. He basically flipped and basically then started kind of not having a go at my instructor, but also like kind of being like, well, why are you teaching him that then? And at that point I was like, well, if I've got like 4 or 5 like minor faults, surely that would be enough for me to pass if you then understand that the decision I had made wasn't actually really due to my decision making, it was due because I was very confident in how I had been taught to do that. But this is where examiners become pricks, and they have to be on their high horse and not come down to a human level of being like, right, clearly you were taught wrong, I'm gonna make sure you know that's the wrong thing to do, but I'll let you off and you can pass that time. Obviously they have to be on their high horse a bit. I think it's also a thing of once they see you fail, they just fail you on the system, and there's no really taking it back, but there's not even an apologetic thing from him or anything. And I think the fact remains is I really should have been able to pass that test first time, but I didn't. And I was just on the board of just like, right, I just need to get my test rebooked whenever I can. But after the test, me and my instructor had a major basically bitching session about it because we both felt kind of ripped off by the whole thing. And my instructor was super generous in the fact of, one, I'd been screwed over by the company in the sense of I'd paid money for 36 hours, I'd gotten probably about less than 30 hours, and obviously that money went to him, so he was like, right, I'm just going to get you through this as best as I can. I think I did about 2 extra lessons with him, and just like short sessions, I think 1 2-hour session, 1 1-hour session, and both times he was like, you're perfectly fine, like he would pass me if he could. And I eventually found, I think I had 1 test booked that was like about 3 weeks away, but I was able to bring it down to like 2 weeks a day from when we were, and this time I knew what to expect. And one of the things that made such a big difference is I had a different examiner, and she was so much nicer, which helped for me to be a bit more calmer during my test. I made sure when I came out of where I was going that I was in the right lane. It was actually a really nice drive to do. Like in my head during the whole like exam, I was just like, this is going too well, what is going to go wrong? And in my head I just had this voice going like, yes, you're going to pass. And then I had this other voice being like, shut the fuck up, you don't know, don't jinx it. And then we came to the end of the exam, and she was like, I'm happy to say you have passed with 0 faults. Now obviously the whole faults thing, that doesn't matter as long as a pass is a pass, as my instructor told me, but having 0 faults, that says a fucking lot. I am going to toot my own horn for this one because I want to give myself credit for something, but it just also shows like I should have passed the first time because I did even better on my second one, as you probably should do. But it's also just like, if examiners are a bit nicer and just a bit more human, it helps calm down the person taking their exam, you know? Be a bit chill. And now here I am about a month later after passing my exam, and I do in fact have a car. I have got a 2017 Hyundai i20, and it's a lovely car. I have given her a name. She is called Hermione. It's been nice, but I kind of just thought I'd make this little video just sort of like talking about my driving journey, I guess, and maybe help inspire or motivate anyone else who may be watching to like be like, you know what, go out and start driving. And also like, I've done it a bit later. I'm 22 now, and I've only just learned to drive, and people my age have been driving for 4+ years, 5+ years in Ellie's case. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Certain circumstances have stopped you from doing it, of maybe when you could have done it, but at least you're actually making the effort to go ahead and want to drive. So put yourself out there and do it, because it's a very useful skill. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I don't know if this is the sort of content people are really going to watch on my channel, but I kind of thought it'd be a nice little like life update sort of thing. I might do another one when I get a proper full-time job. I do have a job right now, but it's a temp job and it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I'll talk about that another time in the future. For now, I've been Ollie Rodriguez-Dolman. Thank you very much for watching. I shall see you in a future video, which will most likely at this point probably be a tier list. I'm trying to work on making a comic book video thing, but I have not got around to it yet, so that's like a proper little project of videos that I want to make out of that as well. So make sure to subscribe, and I shall see you in the next video. Later.